Let's get more on this. And we have Rod Austin, the managing director of one miner, Endocoal, which is a mining company listing its shares on the ASX today, on the Australian Stock Exchange at least. And he joins us this morning from, it looks like a dark Sydney. Rod, hope you're doing well on this Friday morning. Talk to me about this this possible tax implementation. What exactly is the government thinking here, and do you agree?
It's interesting. Good comment. I mean, the thing that's driven Australia's competitiveness, particularly in resources, is the ability for the state governments to use that royalty tax to reflect in the infrastructure developments. If you look at that royalty tax now being replaced by a resources tax at the federal level, the hope there is that the government doesn't kill the goose that laid the golden egg, and will put some of those dollars back into the states for infrastructure spending. I mean, we've seen expectations of growth in demand from China and India, particularly in thermal coal, over the next 3 to 4 years of several hundred million tonnes. That's going to come from companies like mine, which are well placed. We've got development potential near infrastructure. We're very fortunate in all our developments being in the Bowen Basin, near the existing rail lines with access to the ports. And we want to see that expansion, as do all of my other junior companies, in order to be able to access that growth curve.
Yeah, Rod, you know, a lot of people looking at the Australian economy has always said that it's been a two-tiered society. You have the miners on one side and then everybody else. So in your view, if the government does lay this 40% tax on miners, do you think it might be funneled back into the system, back into the economy to level the playing field?
I think that would be an unfortunate outcome. I mean, I'm not too sure if you've ever been underground in a coal mine, but it's hard work. And I've been involved in the sector since the early 90s, and those guys deserve every penny they get. The Australian economy is fueled by the resources sector. Something like 17 to 18% of the total tax collected in Australia comes from the resource sector, which only has an 8% contribution to the economy. So that's a pretty good, turnaround at the moment, and I wouldn't want to see that being discouraged by those dollars not being put back into growth for infrastructure.
Now, the government's argument here, Rod, is that it's not going to actually burden miners if they implement this tax. In fact, it will just standardize the state-based royalties scheme. What do you think of that?
Look, I'm all for simplification of tax systems, but as long as the states still get access to those funds, so they don't be an impediment upon the growth that's required to get the coal and any other resources out to the clients. It's not just coal; it's iron ore and everything else. So fine, as long as there's an even distribution back to those states that need it.
Okay, Rod, let's quickly talk about your IPO, because you're listing today on the Australian Exchange. In fact, your IPO was 4 times oversubscribed. Why don't you raise more cash? I think it's just $17 million that you raised.
Well, I've got to say, some of my existing shareholders who've supported us since day one, particularly out of Asia, they only wanted me to raise about $10 million. They didn't want to see dilution until such time as I've used those funds to prove up a JORC resource. And then we can do things like what Tony Haggerty's done at Whitehaven, joint venture when we get a measured resource at the best possible price I can get for my shareholders.
Okay, Rob, well, good luck with that, and thanks for joining us today.